I Testify is about testifying of what Jesus Christ has done and can do in each of our lives. Through testimony of people just like you and through study of His Word, our prayer is to encourage each follower of Christ to be a light in this world. So let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16.
Hello and welcome to I Testify. Today we are interviewing Jessica Trinh. She is a student and she is also a missionary. She's served in Laos and Vietnam. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience in Laos as a teacher there?
It's really a simple life, and you just feel like you're living life, and the thing is you're just spending time with people, and through your life with them, they come to notice such the difference, as long as it's distinct, you know, and they start to, it's inviting them into your life, and then they invite you into theirs, and that's where the connection happens, and then you start pointing them to Jesus through it. And so you don't think about necessarily being a missionary, you just go like, I'm just living life, I'm just spending time with people.
Oh, yeah. It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, so it's just practical Christianity, is what you're talking about.
It really is, you know. I think initially before I went to Laos, I thought like jungles and huts and the archetypical picture of what a missionary is. But I got there and I'm like, oh, I have, you know, running water. Showers are a little different, but, you know, essentially you're just spending time with people. And then the fact that you have Jesus in your life and the fact that you have prayer before you eat, or the way your diet is, you don't drink, it speaks to them because it's so different from what they know. And also they notice that kind of friendship and the fellowship and your interest in them. It speaks to them in that you care. And so it's very different from what I thought being a missionary is something. It's really anybody can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long were you there?
I was only there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyone can do it,
Yeah.
but not everyone does do it. So why did you do it? What really provoked you to go into the mission field, and why did you pick Laos?
I didn't pick Laos. God did.
Good answer.
I'm just telling the truth. I had always had this heart to, my burden was to be a missionary to Vietnam eventually, because I'm actually Vietnamese. And it was sort of like this pipe dream that I had. I was like, I'm gonna go to Vietnam. I'm gonna start up a vegan restaurant out there, and you know, tell people, because it's a closed country, and the health message is what will, I think, be the most efficient way to get the gospel in. And but it's funny how I prayed. I started praying after I saw this one video. I went to a youth conference and they showed this video about missions, and one of the quotes that came up was, "No one has the right to hear the gospel twice while there remains someone who has not heard it once." And that was like an arrow to my heart, because my grandfather is a pastor. I'm a 4th generation Adventist, and it's like, I've literally heard the gospel preached 52 different ways every year. And you know, I've grown up this way, and there exists like a whole third of the world who has never even heard it once. What am I doing to fix that when I have such a wealth and abundance of this knowledge? And I started praying. You know, I was like, God, you know my heart, that I've always wanted to do it, but it's up to you. And God took time, and suddenly when the opportunity presented itself, it's funny, I actually got cold feet. It's like, it's finally like God says, here you go. And I was like, maybe I want to rethink this. But I started praying. I put it before the Lord in fasting and Bible study, and He made it clear that He wanted me to become a missionary. So many other events happened. He led me to quit my job. I had been working very happily with the Voice of Prophecy. I would have been happy to retire with that job, and to think of quitting that job and going into, I wasn't sure what, to become a missionary. And when they offered me to become a missionary, they said, you can choose from these countries. And I looked, I was like, where's Vietnam? Where's Vietnam? Nothing there. And they actually said, well, based on what we know of your skills and your experience, you should go to this country. And it was Laos. And I was like, well, it's next door. I'll take that. You know, the cultures are very similar, Southeast Asian. And I was like, okay.
Is the food similar?
You know what, there were a lot of dishes that I was like, hey, you know, we eat the rice, we eat the stir-fried vegetables, you know, they're just different names. It was good. So we have the same desserts. Actually, there's a large community of Vietnamese that live in Laos.
Oh, really?
Are
They
they
are-
refugees there? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
refugees, they sort of go into Laos as their ways of looking for better opportunities for living.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of them become they're the ones pushing, you know, taking care of the trash. They're the ones there selling on the street food. And so a lot of the dishes, you know, they know them. I would eat Vietnamese food if I wanted to. So it was really nice.
So you saw similarities when you
Definitely.
were there.
Yeah.
But what about your actual implementation into the environment? Did it take a while to blend in, to get accepted?
Yes, not accepted, because they all think I'm Lao.
Oh, okay.
They would start
Oh.
speaking to me in Lao, but I'm like, oh, sorry. Bo Dai Wow Lao. You know, and it was hard because ironically, you have this concept that like, oh, you know, it's Asian, I'll be able to blend in and get the language. The language is entirely different.
Yeah.
And so it's hard in the sense of I'm used to knowing my element here in America. You know, if I want to do ministry or if I want to share, I can speak in English, I can share from the Bible, and it'll be easy. And I felt entirely handicapped in Laos. There's so many people I wanted to be able to ask questions and know more about them, and I couldn't. So that was definitely challenging for me. And then I was actually an English teacher. I grew up never interested in school, not one bit. I literally used to carve into the school desks in high school, like I hate school. So, but, you know, when God stuck me as an English teacher, I was like, this is ironic.
Yes. Sense of humor.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
So that also was challenging for me too, because like I don't know how to teach, but you know the fact is I know English. I grew up with it, so that was working in my favor, definitely.
Yeah, so that was interesting what you said, how you had this language barrier. So actually that wasn't one of the skills that you had going over there. So you literally you could go over there with other skills. And I think that you said that you did show in other types of communication your Christian faith.
It was definitely working in my favor that I was an English teacher. So the students who come into the school, they're looking to practice English. And so for those who had enough English to be able to communicate, we were able to work with those. And it's also nice that usually those who have the most proficient English, they've actually been with the English school for several years. And so you have that relationship built up by then, and they have also noticed your, you know, your lifestyle, that it's different from everyone else. They're like, why are all the teachers in the school vegetarian?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it then that opens the door because you have their confidence, you have their friendship, that they're willing to go like, you know what, let's see what is it that makes your life different and why do you live it that way?
Were you at a school that like all the teachers were Adventist? Or Christian?
It is yes,
Okay.
all of them are. And so it was, sorry, I just want to make sure that it's safe to sort of share what information I know. Some of it's sensitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of them were Christian, and it was definitely something that the students did notice. The fact that all the teachers were Christians, it set up an environment that the students did notice was different from their own regular schooling. And it really, one of the students who actually was attending there for several years, he became friends with many of the teachers year after year. One of them eventually gave him a Bible. And I spoke with him and I said, you know, so what do you think about coming to the school? And he said, I love the environment here. You know, in my regular school, it's competitive. We tear each other down, but here we respect each other. We don't make fun of each other. I love the environment here. And over time, actually, in that year, by God's grace, I actually saw him say that he wanted to become Christian, that he called himself a Christian. And later in the year, he actually became baptized.
You got
Oh, praise God.
baptized.
Yeah, praise God.
What age range did you teach?
I was intermediate, so you had professionals, working professionals, but then you
So
also
these are
had high
adults.
schoolers. Yeah.
Okay, so 15 years old.
16 up to
16.
even up to 25 or so.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's quite a large
Yeah,
range. Did you find a difference in witnessing to these different age ranges, or?
I think the adults were more open to making mistakes, you know, and the kids, they're self-conscious, and so yeah, it was different. It was fun because the adults are more confident. You actually they're more open to being friends, but there's also that element that the younger ones, they sort of look up to you because you're a foreigner. You're like, ooh, you're from America, you know, and then they want to learn English. So it came with different dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do most of the students here of the school?
Learning English is definitely a commodity. I think we really take it for granted. But for many countries, English is the way to get anywhere in life. If you want to get a better living, better quality of life, you're going to learn English. And so I liked how this, one of the, sort of a missionary, he started an English school, and he says it this way. You know, we usually know that the medical work is the right arm of the gospel, but in Southeast Asia, it is English teaching.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
And it's true. You know, there have been so many ways to open doors, and having English as that platform, you know, we take it so for granted. You know what? You can speak, you know, if you can teach a third grader how to teach English, how to say a sentence, you can go into so many different countries and act as a missionary. It really opens those doors.
So you're basically saying anyone from the United States could go and be a
Any of us could go.
Yeah.
You could go.
Yeah.
I plan to.
What was something that you were surprised about in a positive way
Yeah.
while you were there? Something that you weren't expecting, and then something that was surprising in a negative way?
Wow. Presence, the power of presence. You know, also really what it is to be in a culture that knows Jesus or knows God. Even if people don't believe it or, you know, become Christians in America, everyone has some kind of knowledge of who God is. In Laos, it's literally 99% of the people don't know Jesus. Large populations will grow up and live and die never hearing about the name of Jesus one time. And so they celebrate these things like Christmas, and they have no clue why they celebrate it. They can see a cross, and they know that a lot of people, it means something to people, but they have no clue what it means. And there's this one of my best friends, she actually was able to, she said, you know, do you know where Christmas started? And the student was like, no, I don't. Shared the story of where Christmas began with the birth of Jesus. And that student, other friends came in, he's like, do you know where Christmas comes from? And he started sharing it because they just don't know. And I think also it all ties into the fact that, you know, you being in their life actually makes such a difference to their culture. I don't know what it is, but I feel that their culture that comes from this, they don't have any belief in something that loves them like we do. And it permeates to their relationships with their friends and to their family, where there are so many students that have shared, like, you know, teacher, why do you love me more than my friends have loved me?
Wow.
And some of my closest one was like, you know, teacher, I've never heard my parents have never told me I love you. And she's like 17, 18 years old. And I'm like, are you sure? You know, yeah, they love you. I'm sure they do. You know, ask them. He's like, I've asked them, and they've never told me I love you. And we take for granted what it is to know that there is really, like, at that moment, I was like, wow, Christianity is the best religion, that we have a God that loves us back. There is no other religion where God loves you back. And this divine being who steps down and says, I'll give my life for you. It makes a difference in society. And so that was really positive. And I remember that there's this one student, I seriously would spend maybe 5 minutes at most after every class, and just like take an interest in her life and just ask her how she's doing, and she would seem happy. And at the end of before I left, she said, "Teacher, I want to give you a gift." And she comes up to me and she's like, "Here, this is, before you go, thank you so much. I love you." I was like, "Oh, how sweet." And then she said, "I'm going to miss you so much. Thank you so much." And she started weeping, literally weeping and bawling. And I realized, like, wow, they are so hungry for love in this culture. They are so deeply deficient of love. And so,
Do you think they're naturally cold as a defense mechanism in order to
Yes.
not get hurt or to protect themselves against like getting abandoned, or what do
I
you
mean, is that part of the culture?
Yeah, it
you know
seems like
what's
it's
interesting? Now that you bring that up, in the culture, because of the spirit worship that's tied with the Buddhism, they don't even cry at funerals. You're not allowed to cry. The moment that someone, they start burning the body, they actually start putting out fireworks and throwing out candy to get people happy. Because they believe that if you cry, you make the spirits angry, and the spirit of the body will be like unhappy. And so even those kind of things, I think, contribute to the lack of expression of love.
Does Laos have those little, like, almost like little bird houses on the tree where the spirit lives? Is that?
It's they have
It looks like a
a
birdhouse.
spirit house. It looks like a birdhouse. It really
like a
does.
birdhouse.
Yeah.
They have one outside of every home because they believe that if you don't want the spirit to live in your house, you better give the spirit its own. And I have a good friend who was in a
That's tiny
sense-
home living.
It's interesting because they actually have ones where they build really large.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah. So depending, like they make it luxurious for the spirit to live in.
Right.
2-story floors. Like wow.
Wow.
So they spend a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, to make the spirits happy.
make the
They live very much in a large fear of spirits. It's part of the reality. One of my friends, she would be harassed by spirits because her family didn't have a spirit house. She would see these sort of, I don't know, these figures, and they didn't have a shape or form, but they would come at night, and she would be bothered in her sleep, and so
Wow.
yeah, but it stopped the moment they made a spirit house.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So you've told us about some of your experiences. Are there any verses, Bible verses, that you have that you kept close to you that spurred you on during this time in Laos as a missionary?
Definitely. When you realize the depth of the deficiency of the gospel, of the knowledge of Jesus, you realize, and when someone finds who Jesus is, it becomes so valuable. There's a verse, it's 1 Peter 18, I think, 19.
Get our
We can
Bibles
look
out.
it up, and viewers at home, you can also join us. We'd love if you would. Get your Bible or your phones, and let's read the scripture together.
What was it? First Peter?
1 Peter 1,
1 Peter 1.
18 and 19. Oh.
Was it
1 Peter
17? Is that what it was? 17, 18?
18 and 19? 1 Peter 1?
1 Peter 1, 18 and, yeah, 18 and 19.
Okay.
Go ahead and read it out. Knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. It's the blood, like the gospel and the power of it, and the fact that Jesus gave his life for each and every single person. There is no value to it. And it's really, you realize it when you see the lives that have changed. There is no value that you could give me for seeing, like, wow, these people that make the decision to become a Christian. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, I was reminded of a really great sermon that I always like to listen to over and over again when I read these verses, because you gave them to us before. And when I read them before, is just that, do we know how much it costs him? Do we really, really think, do we really reflect on what it cost him? And it was more than any of us obviously ever deserve. But when you reflect on actually what he did, what Jesus Christ did for each and every one of us, it it brings you pause. Like it gives you pause.
Yeah.
It changes your life. It changes hearts.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you know, if someone's involved in a car accident or some tragedy happens, there's the compensation for the person's life that's lost, you know, and there's the value of a life, and people try to put numbers on a life because that person may have had 50 years left, or 30 years left, or 20 years left, and depending on how much time they have left, then that's going to be kind of determines the value that they have.
Yeah.
But when you have God who has an infinite life from beginning to end, how do you determine that kind of value? You know, how do you put a value on that? And I think that's why our minds really can't fathom the cost of Christ, because we just don't understand infinity, the infinite value.
And he was
really true.
forever changed. He
Yeah.
was forever changed because of his love for us. It's beautiful.
Amen. And I like that focus on love, because I believe that it is the most powerful force in the universe. Not only is it exemplified, you know, in the animal life of, you know, mothers rescuing their children, you know, from the jaws of death,
Yeah.
but of course through Christ, you know, sending his son. And I think that's where I believe where we get that phrase, one of the
God
phrases
sending
that-
his son.
God sending his
God
son.
sending his
Thank you so much. Of, you know, love is stronger than death. One aspect I wanted to kind of ask you a little bit more was, are there various examples in their culture or aspects of nature that you saw and that you saw as an opportunity to bring out Christ? And to kind of give like further foundation for that, I wanted us to turn to Acts chapter 17, verse 23.
It's like an object lesson.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like an object
Acts-
lesson. So
Acts-
Acts chapter 17, verse 23.
17.
Yes.
Oh, it's just like God the Father. When you, sorry, God, what I meant is God the Father.
Okay.
When you said that before.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, no
Go ahead.
problem. No problem. Yeah, thank you. This is a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Paul seeking to preach the gospel to the Athenian philosophers on the famous hill there. And verse 23, it says, "For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you." Did you have that experience saying, you know, that aspect in your culture or that word actually kind of falls back, you know, to the God that loves you, but you're seeking after, but you don't know? Is there anything that, a similar experience to what Paul had?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, okay.
That was,
Or something in nature that you noticed and that you say, you know, this reminds me of this story in the Bible, or it reminds me of this spiritual lesson that I'd like to share with you.
I guess it's perhaps I didn't get to that level. I was still sort of in the midst of trying to learn the culture, learn the language. I was more starting at the baseline so in my class, when I would try and teach them, you know, how to pronounce English, we would have to use. I decided to pull up this quote, not this quote, but all these facts, like to show that there is no way that this world could have been made by accident. You know, like there's no way that the world just happened to be at the right angle, happened to be in the right place for the sunlight to hit it. And so, you know, you sort of start small, start at that. I was at that place where I had to start at that very baseline, just plant the seeds first. Yeah.
That's good, that's good. And therefore your presence, you know, was a testimony to them, the power of your presence. I remember you mentioning that earlier.
Do they realize when you're there that you're there because you want to be? Like a lot of people get jobs because they're there for the money. Obviously you're not. So do they realize like, wow, she's here because she cares about us, not because she's here to further herself?
I did get that question a lot, like, why are you here?
Really?
And just like, you know, I wanted to help people and be here. And I don't know how much they thought about it, but I mean, that's the answer I provided them.
Yeah. She'd almost like give a little background about you, like not like what you gave up, like I gave up all this for you, but like just like an idea, like, oh, she doesn't need to be here. You know, she wants to be here. I don't know. It's just definitely, I think there's a little more power to the how much you care. You know.
Seems to me that those would be the underpinnings of the love that they showed to her because, I mean, for you, you didn't ask for anything back from them, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of goes along those same lines of like, well, she doesn't want anything from me.
Yeah.
She's just here to give, right? Like
Yeah.
Jessica, you were just there to give. Powerful.
I really like that concept, and it reminds me of Paul. He has this verse, I think, in 1 Corinthians that I think just gives such a picture of the whole, why we go out, why we share with people. 1 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 9, verse 22.
Oh, I'm there.
I think it really fits in with what you were saying. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22, to the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means, like, I love that, by all means, even just to save some. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole point and purpose, I feel like, that we should have carry that same burden. Like, are we trying with everything we've got, even if it takes us to become as weak as they are, come to their point, come to where they are in their place, cross 5 different time zones, for the sole purpose, even if it's just to save some. Do we try with everything we've got, all our means? Do we put it in to save at least someone?
Yeah.
Personally, how have you changed through this experience?
I feel, the thing that comes off the top of my head, I was 3 months into being in Laos. It's a place where I'm riding a bicycle, the roads are dirt, I don't know the language, and I was entirely like a fish out of water. But I was happy. I have never known, there is no price tag for when you know you are in the center of God's will and you are doing what He has called you to do since the day you were born. And I realized, like, wow, in a sense, I feel like my spiritual journey sort of had been like, not mediocre, but not quite at the tip. And I felt like I was it. This was it. And I had the blessing to be there in the center of God's will of everything He wanted me to have.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I thank you so much for sharing your story and how the Lord has been using your life to be a testament to the student,
God is good.
and how God is using your life to show His love, which is the most important thing. And so to our viewers, I want to thank you so much for watching. Hope that you can visit us next week. Thank you we really appreciate you continuing to support our ministry, not only through your prayers, but also through your donations and other support. Feel free to connect with us through our website or send us a letter through our address. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.